What's up guys, my name's Brandon and today Apple released iOS 13.7 to the public along with watchOS 7 Beta 7. So a pretty unusual combination of releases here since we didn't get the iOS 14 Beta 7 release today, and we'll talk more about that later. But anyways, 13.7, yes, it was released today, and you can see here the size actually comes in at 4.21 gigabytes if you were on the beta. So if you're not on the beta, if you were just on 13.6.1, this update will be pretty small, pretty much under 200 megabytes for the majority of you guys. But anyways, let's go ahead and talk about what's new in this software update. And it's a pretty small update, but it is going to be one of the final releases of iOS 13 before we get iOS 14 in the coming months. So let's go ahead and check out the build number for this update and then talk about what's new. So if you go to settings, general about 13.7, you can see here the build number is 13H35. So it is a little bit different than that first beta, the only beta of 13.7 that was released to beta testers last week. And if we scroll down to the modem firmware is unchanged from iOS 13.6.1. It remains at 2.7.00. So if you were having connectivity issues in iOS 13.6.1, those are not likely to be resolved with this software update. So now what's new in iOS 13.7 compared to iOS 13.6.1? And really, there's just one thing. So if we go back to our settings here and then scroll down to exposure notifications, so you can see there we have a new location now for the COVID-19 exposure logging and the exposure notifications. So if you tap on that, you can see we have a new screen here as well, and you're now able to turn on exposure notifications without having an application installed. So previously this whole section was grayed out and you would have to have an application installed from your local government to be able to enable exposure notifications. But now with iOS 13.7, you can enable them right here without an app. And you also get the availability alert, which will alert you when an application is available in your region for COVID-19 exposure logging. And if you want to read about how all this works, there is a little button here that says how exposure notifications work. And if you tap on that, it shows you exactly what happens on your phone and how it's helpful and things like that. But if we want to test out this new feature, if we go ahead and click on turn on exposure notifications, you can see we get this nice little walkthrough screen here, and it says COVID-19 exposure notifications. Your iPhone can tell you if you may have been exposed to COVID-19. Your public health authority's guidelines determine if an exposure is significant enough to notify you and provide the next steps. So let's go ahead and click on continue. We're going to go ahead and select our region here of the United States. And then I'm in Florida, so I'm going to go ahead and select on Florida. And you can see here I do not have exposure notifications available in Florida. So for some reason, we still do not have an application for COVID-19 contact tracing, which is unfortunate. We're in September and we still don't have an application for that, whereas a lot of other states and countries do. But anyways, if you do have an application, it would show it right there, but I do not, so it just takes me back to the screen right here. Now, I also wanted to mention that the VPN bug or the VPN bypass vulnerability has not been fixed in iOS 13.6 or 13.6.1, so there's a good chance it's still not fixed in 13.7 either. So if you don't know about this bug, I talk about it a lot in my iOS updates, but essentially it just allows traffic to bleed through the VPN tunnel, and not all of your traffic actually goes through that VPN tunnel and isn't as secure as you would wish. So that is most likely still available in 13.7, unfortunately, and I will update the description if this does somehow happen to be fixed in this update. But the fact that this update was pretty much pushed just for that COVID-19 contact tracing, that leads me to believe that there's definitely not a fix for a VPN bug, especially if Apple did not mention it. But as far as everything else in the software, everything in 13.7 is exactly the same as in 13.6.1, all the way down to both the performance and the battery life. So if we go to the Geekbench test here, let's go ahead and see what the scores are compared to 13.6.1. So you can see the Geekbench scores up top here. We got an 1116 single core and a 2841 multi-core. So from 13.6.1, it is a slight decrease in both the single core and the multi-core, just one score difference in the single core, but a little bit different there in the multi-core. But once again, these Geekbench tests don't really tell the full story. The performance is going to be pretty much exactly the same as 13.6.1, which was pretty much exactly the same as 13.6. Apple's not really, adding any type of stability to these updates just because 13.6 was already pretty stable. So if there are other bugs, if you still have apps crashing and things like that, then those very well could be fixed in 13.7. But I've not experienced really any issues at all with 13.6 or 13.6.1 in terms of performance. So I would really not expect any type of performance boost with 13.7, but at the same time, it's probably not going to get worse either. So you should be pretty safe with this update. And as far as battery life goes, battery life is going to be the same situation. Now, 13.6.1 did improve battery life for a lot of people. So I know some people are going to be scared to update because they think that 13.7 might hurt their battery life. But once again, it's pretty much the same situation as what I said with the performance. So the battery life is most likely not touched at all in 13.7. So you're probably going to get exactly the same battery life that you got in 13.6.1, which was pretty solid for pretty much everybody that I've heard from. So as far as battery life and performance, you should expect about the same. So I really don't see any type of downside to updating to 13.7. Now, with that being said, if you want to stay safe and you don't have any issues whatsoever on 13.6.1 and you don't care about the COVID-19 exposure logging, then I would just stay put on 13.6.1 just because you really don't gain anything by going to 13.7. So you need to make your mind up, and every situation is going to be different. But just know that you're not gaining much by going from 13.6.1 to 13.7. And like I've mentioned previously, we could still see a 13.7.1 at some point down the road. If there are some bugs introduced with 13.7, Apple will push out a 13.7.1 before we get iOS 14. Now, speaking of iOS 14, when can we expect iOS 14 Beta 7, which a lot of people, including myself, thought would be released today. So since Apple has been liking the Tuesday and Wednesday releases for betas, I would expect iOS 14 Beta 7 either later today on Tuesday or tomorrow on Wednesday, September 2nd. Either one of those dates are very possible. We could even see it on a Thursday, which would be pretty rare, but we could also see it on the 3rd. But my bet is either on the 1st later today or on Wednesday the 2nd. And for those of you on the public beta program, you will likely see that beta the same day as the developers, just like with beta 6. But anyways, guys, that's pretty much it for iOS 13.7, a very small update that I don't think a lot of people are really going to feel the need to update to. But of course, you guys know I like to bring you these videos anytime a new software is released, just so you guys know what's new and if you should update or not. So if you guys enjoyed this video, I would appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up. And of course, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss all my iOS 13 and iOS 14 content coming in the future. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.